Thank you, Om. Thank you, Paul. A reminder, please, if you're standing, please find an open seat so the fire marshal doesn't come in and wag their finger at us. That would be very appreciative. Now, if you don't give a big round of applause for our next speaker, he's going to find out and it's going to go on your permanent record. He is Mr. Gus Hunt. He is the CTO of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he's going to be talking about the CIA's grand challenges with big data. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Gus Hunt.
All right, so as the only person standing between you and lunch, I'm not sure if this is the right place that I actually want to be, but we'll see if we can keep this interesting for you. So I'm Gus Hunt, I'm the CTO at CIA. I'm going to talk to you a lot about stuff you've probably already heard as you've listened through the day, a lot of the same subjects, but I'm going to try and give it to you from our perspective of what's actually going on in the world, why it matters to us, and then what we think needs to change in order to actually enable us and I think private sector itself take advantage of big data. If you think about the world that we've been into, cloud is passé, right? It was so 3 years ago. All right, today we're in the point where big data was so last year, right? All those breathless articles and all the front page covers. I was expecting big data to be Times Man of the Year, right? This year, what we're really talking about is how do we get value out of this stuff? And I think that's a lot of the conversations I've been hearing around what's been going here. So, real quick, in case you didn't know what we did for a living, right? The CIA has 3 business lines, all right? We collect information about the plans and intentions of our adversaries. We do this thing called all-source analysis, where we'll bring the information we collect together with any information we can get our hands on so that we can tell the President and the Secretary of Defense and policymakers and everybody else what it all means. And the third thing we do, and we're the only agency authorized to do this by law at the discretion of the President of the United States, is this final thing called covert action. And so those are 3 things that we do. So about 4 years ago, when I took over as CTO of the organizations, we sat down and said, what is it that we have to be able to make sure we do well into the future? And so we set what we call our 4 big bets. All right, and big bet number 1 from 4 years ago is it's all about big data. It's about our ability to take advantage of these massive information streams that have emerged on the planet so that we can figure out what's going on in them and protect national security. That's what we do. All right, number 2, and this preceded all this talk about sequestration and things like that, but the fact is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to you, the taxpayers, to make sure that we execute every dollar we spend as well as possible. All right? But when we think about this thing, this is not a lowest cost proposition, this is the best value proposition. And for us, value is defined as outcomes divided by cost and time. More outcomes in less time is a much better value thing to get done. 3, and something that we very intently focus on, is that we have to act better together as a community. Despite what you read about the fact that there is massive dysfunction and we don't share information, all these things like that, all right, it's actually not true. We actually do a really good job. It's just that every organization within anything, just like in the private sector, we come at problems from different aspects and different angles, and that creates sometimes a little discussion about what's the right way to solve some of the problems that we face. Right? And then number 4, it's all about people. Right? If you don't have the right talent, we can't execute any things that we did. All right? And then we said, all right, to accomplish these things, we're going to have an enduring framework in which we're going to invest. And so we put up these things. These are what we call our 6 key technology enablers. This is the things that we intend to invest in for the long haul in order to make sure that we are a viable, competitive organization heading into the future. And they're really simple things, and these are things that you know very well, but secure mobility for us is a huge deal, right? Mobile is not secure. Repeat after me. Mobile is not secure. It really isn't, all right? So how are we going to make this secure in our environment so we can take advantage of it? This is a big thing, right? The second one up there is what we call advanced analytics. This is actually analytics as a service. It's everything we want to be able to do with big data to do the jobs that we have to be able to that we have to do to support the national security of our nation. All right, the third one up there is what we call widgets and services. We got into this thing through a thing we call the Ozone Framework. The Ozone Framework is a framework that the intelligence community developed based on the Google framework. But fundamentally, it's all the same reasons you like your smartphone and your iPad and things like that, that you can personalize it and put onto it the things that you that need for your personal life or for your business life that matter to you. We need to build an environment where our analysts and our operators and other people like that can basically put on the necessary functionality that matters to them and personalize our world. And we call this a web top or a device top or any other thing you want to call it. All right. 4, which by the way is 3 on the chart, and I'm not going to explain the odd binary numbering system. It's a long story. So 4, which is number 3 on your chart, security as a service. What we want to get out of is we don't want you to have to build security from top to bottom every time you deliver or build us a system. What we want to be able to do is have a set of security services and the best practices out of what was the old services-oriented architecture world. Anybody remember that world? Okay, I'm dating myself, I'm sure. Right? But these are security services into which what happens is that the widgets and the analytics above it have to talk to the security services in the middle in order to get to data and computational infrastructure and things like that below it. And so the security services all have to be in common, and these are things that we want to make sure are very consistently enforced across anybody touching any piece of data through any analytic has to run through one of these security services. 5, it's all about data, right? And I'm going to talk more about it's the data stupid coming up here in a second, but it's all about the data. And so we have this concept of data as a service and an thing we call the data harbor. The data harbor is not a place, but it really is all about us bringing to bear these massive computational engines that so many of you out here in the exhibition hall have and are showing off. But what we have discovered, or we believe is true, is the fact that all the analytics up above often want to consume common sets of this large, high-performance computational infrastructure underneath the covers there. What we want is an environment into which all of our data and these common computational, massive computational infrastructure things are already in place so that it's very easy for us to plug in a new idea or a new capability on top because I can leverage what's already in place underneath. And then 5, in order to do all these things, it's all about massive computational capacity. Then this funny little thing called the cloud. Okay. All right. Oops, sorry, wrong button. Okay. So, did you ever ask yourself how big big was? Because we do this all the time. So I'm going to give you a quick run through on how big big actually is. All right. So how big is big, right? So you guys know Google. Google's a very big provider of things. Google stopped reporting how big it was, at least that we can find, about 4 years ago in their 2009 or 2010 SEC filing. At that time, they said that there were more than 100 petabytes in size, more than 1 trillion index URLs, right? Pretty big stuff, all right? Facebook, you know, exceeded 1 billion users, right? And I guess it was August of last year. So they're way over 1 billion at this stage of the game. What's more interesting, I found, was that the latest numbers that are coming out about Facebook is that roughly 35% of all the world's digital photography gets put onto Facebook. All right? YouTube. We believe that YouTube is the only exabyte scale or bigger, you know, repository that we've been able to come across on the planet, at least in the public sector. Across the board. And what happened was YouTube in the last filing that we saw was about 768 petabytes. If you do the math on how much data gets out of YouTube, what you find out is that from about 3 to 4 years ago, YouTube is clearly better than an exabyte. You know the world population back in about April ticked past the 7 billion mark. All right. Everybody talks about Twitter and how big Twitter is. Twitter is about 124 billion tweets a year, 4,500 a second. Twitter is a piker relative to global text messaging, all right, which is about 193,000 a second, of which 190,000 of them are generated by my daughter alone. I have the bills to prove it, okay? And then, but even that's small relative to US cell calls, right? The US alone is roughly 2.2 trillion minutes a year, 19 minutes a person a day, which I find awfully small, again, using my daughter as a measure of average, all right? That's about 2 orders of magnitude too small. Anyhow, but if you think about it, uncompressed, that's only a YouTube a year, right? So when you think about those things. All right, so what's making all this happen, right? So I think you all know this pretty well, right? There's 3 fundamental driving forces which have been around now for the past several years, and this is a funny little thing called social mobile cloud, right? And so it's the social mobile cloud thing that drove so much of the big data, and in fact, big data was made real because of the combination of these 3 things, right? In the social world, things go viral in a hurry. And when things go viral in a hurry, they need to have a computational space that will scale elastically with them. They brought out the cloud into existence. Everybody wants to be social, exchange information, and all this together is conspired to deliver what we just talked about, some of the big data stuff that's there. All right. This has been a dramatic increase in the velocity of innovation. Any of you who are startups today, what happens? Do you actually ever go to your investment companies, except in very special cases, and tell them that you're going to buy a bunch of hardware and hire a bunch of sysadmins and you're going to get started to do work? Does anybody do that? Right. It's pretty rare. Most people, you find out, what do? You go, you swipe your credit card at Amazon or Rackspace or something like that. You get your capacity, you get started, you do some work. It allows you to go very fast, very cheaply, and you focus on what it is you want to build and deliver and not focus on trying to run this underlying infrastructure, right? So I keep hitting that other button. Okay. And for our world, what's happened is the social mobile cloud has dramatically accelerated social change in ways that were absolutely unanticipated and I don't think could have existed prior to these technologies coming into play. And a classic example of this is Arab Spring. It was the ability of the groups in Arab Spring to continue to communicate despite the fact that their totalitarian regime governments were trying to shut them off that enabled the Arab Spring process and the Arab Spring protest to come to whatever the fruition is that we're going to find out here in a little while, right? We're still trying to figure out what all this means, all right? Okay, and fundamentally in our world, what's really important is that this social mobile cloud thing has completely altered the flow of information on the entire planet. When I started as an analyst years ago inside the CIA, the world was pretty simple. It was the world of the few to the many in terms of information flows, right? So you had NBC and you had CNN and you had the TASS and you had the Times and you had, the Washington Post. And what you had was the classic model of there were a few generators of information all telling the rest of us how and what to think, and that was how things were distributed. The social mobile cloud world has completely inverted that model, and has gone to this complex many-to-many model. And I got to tell you, we really like the few to the many model. All right? It's really easy to take advantage of this model, right? When everybody is talking and everybody's sharing information, right? What's really interesting is that while there's a whole lot of noise out there, and there is signal that we have to be able to find, and that is, I think, one of the predominant problems of big data in the world is how do you find how do you find a signal in ever increasing seas of noise? Okay, now. You think that's complex, and I think you know this. In fact, the health guy, Aetna, was just talking about this a little bit, and others, is that there's these three emerging forces, all right, of nano, bio, and sensors, all right? And so when you begin to think about this world, you're already a walking sensor platform. You guys know this, I hope, right? Which is that your mobile device, your smartphone, your iPad, wherever it's going to be, has got just any number of these things. In fact, I think this is a limited list of what's inside these devices and what's going to be emerging inside these spaces, right? So as you walk around, you yourself are a walking mobile sensor platform. And as you walk around, by the way, remember I told you mobile is not secure, you are aware of the fact that somebody can know where you are at all times because you carry a mobile device, even if that mobile device is turned off. You know this, I hope. Yes? No? All right, well you should, all right? Because it's really important to begin to think about that, okay? And what's happened is that if you're a Star Trek fan, like I was when I was a kid, right, what's turned out is that this mobile platform, your smartphones, have turned into your communicator. They're becoming your tricorder. They're becoming your transporter, right? How do you get on an airplane these days? Do you walk up with a piece of paper like I do? Because we don't do mobile very well in my place. No, you walk up with your little boarding pass, symbol on your thing, and you wave it in front of the magic thing, and it gets transported to wherever it is you want to be able to go. But it's also becoming a mobile health platform, right? So right now you can buy plugins that can be, for becoming a pacemaker. They do blood sugar monitoring, insulin control, health, all these health monitoring things. The health industry itself is looking very hard at how can we begin to do remote health monitoring to you so that we can continuously pay attention to what's happening to you and your body, and then be able to do things like remote tune-up. All right? So Gus talks very fast, and so I'm just very worried about the fact that somebody's going to hack my remote tune-up and crank up my little pacemaker thing, and then I'll talk a whole lot faster to you guys. But this is something you got to worry about, because when you think about cyber threats as they emerge, it's not just against your business. Ultimately, it's going to be against you and your health are things that are going to become at risk if you're not careful. Okay? And in fact, if you think about your mobile sensor platform, there's a really cool little app, Active Tracker. It's a little Android app. Have you guys seen this anywhere? Right? What they have discovered is fundamentally they take your 3-axis accelerometer that's in your phone. I actually carry a Fitbit. You guys know the Fitbit, right? It's just a simple 3-axis accelerometer, right? We like these things because they don't have any, they can't, well, I won't go into that. Okay, all right. Anyhow, but so what happens is what they discovered is just simply by looking at the data, what they can find out is with pretty good accuracy what your gender is, whether you're tall or you're short, whether you're heavy or you're light. But what's really most intriguing is that you can be 100% guaranteed to be identified by simply your gait, how you walk. All right? Now, this could be a really good thing. So think about this as a security app, right? If you're walking along and you want to access your bank code, maybe it can become simplified because they can, with absolute assurance, know it's you by your gait trying to do something with your bank, right? On the other hand, if you don't want to be found or you want to protect